Hello everyone, how are we doing? Hello everyone. Hi, first of all, thank you very much for joining us here. It's so great to see so many people. And for this new meetup, can I just see a show of hands who's the first time at an Ansible meetup? Excellent. I've seen so many new people joining me up, so it's so nice that you can all join us here. And I see a familiar face in the back there. Hello. So that's brilliant. How many people are pretty new to Ansible, so been using it less than 6 months? Excellent, excellent. And who are old dogs and been submitting pull requests and filing bugs and part of the, in the positive sense, Excellent, another good set. So we've got a really good mix of people here today, and we've got a really interesting set of talks as well that should cater to all the levels. So for those of you that haven't met me before, I'm John Barker. I'm part of the Ansible core team, so I'm actually in the UK. I'm in Cambridge, so pretty close to here. You can find me as Gundalo on GitHub and Freenode IRC if you've got any comments or feedback. That'd be appreciated. First of all, as I said, massive thanks to you, but also for Sainsbury's for letting us use this amazing venue. I'd like to point out that Sainsbury's do have a load of jobs open that may or may not include Ansible. So have a look at that. That link should actually have been informed, should be sainsbury's.com/.work. Actually, or will take you direct to the job site. So Sainsbury's provided the venue and the beer. Red Hat provided pizza, so that's a nice combination there. Pizza will be after the first talk, is to make sure at least you listen to at least some of the talks. Don't know if you know, but we're currently working on the tail end of Ansible 2.4. That'll be out in a couple of months. Testing welcome, I guess. We're getting pretty close to code freezes tomorrow, so all new functionality will be complete tomorrow, and we'll just be working through the bugs. Core functionality, yes. So module freezes a little bit after. Thanks, Mike. Please have a look at that. Do some testing. Means we can give you a much more stable release. We rely on you guys for the feedback. If you go to GitHub, you can have a look at the changelog, which gives you all the details of what's on there. The next meetup should be in about 2 months. We'll get that posted online soon. And we'll do a little session about all the fun and exciting stuff that's in there and the another 200 or 300 modules that we've been added since last release. I just want to do a quick bit of publicity before we go into today's talks. Who's aware that we have different working groups or special interest groups in Ansible? 2, 3, excellent. For the rest of you, we have some working groups or special interest groups. They're in Ansible. Basically what they are, it's a way for people with a similar interest to get involved and to help drive direction. It doesn't have to be done by anyone in the core team, it's all Red Hat staff. It can be all done by you. That's not to say we won't support you or help you. It's just whatever we can do to help make your life easier in helping us improve Ansible or add new functionality, we can help you do that. So if there's people have got a pet interest or something like that. So one of the guys, Mike, who's going to be talking later, he's quite involved in the Amazon, the AWS working group, and they've been working out stuff. One of the main things I'd like to point out with this, you don't need to be a programmer. I'm not a programmer, but I am working full-time on code. I try and avoid writing code because it generally ends up in tears for everyone. But there's loads of other stuff that can be done there. Testing, reviewing documentation, improving documentation, testing pull requests, all these things can help out in different ways. There's little 5-minute tasks, there's month-long tasks. I don't want to say it's a cool thing that you can put on your CV, is a nice little aside, but there's loads of awesome stuff there. As of today, that is the list of working groups. So these are all channels on Freenode IRC. Please feel free to join them. Even if you just idle in, you might pick up some interesting or be able to help out someone with a look at your expertise. I'll be putting these slides online as well. But just on the last slide here, so this last link, GitHub/Ansible/community has got all the links in. Or if you go on to Freenode and just do list channels, #Ansible, you'll get them all. Ansible develops a bit of a special case. That's where most of the cross-functional development chat goes. And the testing working group, which I talked a bit about in the last meetup. Yeah, like I said, I'll put these online. I'll set up the next date for the Ansible meetup soon. If you look on the meetup page, there's a Google form you can fill in, which will let you add if you've got any ideas for topics. It'd be great to have some more topics in there for next time. I know San Francisco is a little bit further than London, than the O2, where the Ansible Festival was a couple of months ago, but if anyone is planning over going over there, 50% off. You still have to pay for your airfare though, unfortunately. There's two things closer to home. There's the DevOps days and the, can't spell there, Container Camp. There's some discount codes there as well. Right, that's enough of me. You're not here to listen to me. So first of all, got the first speaker is going to be doing a session on using Ansible to configure iOS. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Sainsbury's, and thanks, John, for giving me the opportunity to talk here. So my name is Shashi, and today I'm going to talk about building iOS CI server with Ansible. So first of all, can I ask how many of you have iOS apps or work in iOS apps? Okay, very few. So I know it's a real strange combination with Ansible and iOS, because Ansible is Red Hat, completely based on Linux, and the Apple ecosystem is built on Unix and macOS. So it's going to be a strange combination. So today I'm going to talk about the things we did in my last company I worked for. So Ansible fits perfectly in there to configure our iOS CI server. So we can see in the presentation later today. So what we're going to cover in next maybe 30, 40 minutes is kind of a brief overview about iOS continuous integration and software packages that require to set up iOS continuous integration, and what are the challenges of using Ansible on especially the macOS platform, and some of the tasks and the playbooks and role that I pushed on the Ansible Galaxy, just to make sure that how the Ansible can play with the macOS ecosystem. So let's get started first. So iOS continuous integration. So basically, it's much different because Ansible is Linux, Red Hat, and you guys have quite well familiar with AWS provisioning the Linux servers and maybe Jenkins, Docker, but this is a completely different ecosystem. It needs Mac OS servers, so probably Mac Minis and maybe some iOS devices attached to your server. So a little bit of things like every continuous integration stage has first of all, every CI server has to have your code analysis, then you build your software, then you test your software, then you package it, and then ship it to the various platforms. So similarly, iOS has different toolings. I don't want to go into detail. I just introduced the name of the tool. So static analysis is done by Swift because Swift is now popular programming language for developing iOS apps. So then the building of iOS apps is done by the Xcode build tool. So this is again the command line tool which can be used for building our iOS apps. The XC test is a framework for Apple. So this is also used for unit testing and the UI testing of applications. And at the end of that, we get the IPA, which is kind of a binary that is ready to upload to the iTunes Connect. So once we upload the binary to iTunes Connect, then our app is ready for submit, and then once it's reviewed, then it's available in App Store. So let's talk about some of the CI server available for the iOS. So so you might be familiar with this guy because this guy is very popular in web and API, because probably most of the people can't live without this. But in Apple ecosystem, Apple has their own continuous integration server called Xcode server, that bot there. We can use TeamCity or maybe some self-hosted things. There are some cloud-based CI. So, for example, the Travis CI, Circle CI, that can be the well-known because that works well with the GitHub. So if you have a GitHub project, then that can be easily integrated with Travis or Circle CI. But these two guys might be new to you. So there's one called BuddyBuild, one called Bitrise, and there might be many more suppliers. So these are the few examples for the continuous integration system in iOS. So let's talk about what's required for setting up your iOS CI server. So everything you want to provision, you need to have a list of the tools and softwares you need to provision. Basically, you need to have some sort of a package list or some sort of software that needs to be installed on server. So the first, this guy, the Xcode. So Xcode is a kind of a base of every iOS developer's toolkit. So once you got the Xcode installed on any server, 50% of your job has been done, because this guy can do anything like packaging your app. It can install some command line tools, and those command line tools can be used for provisioning all sort of iOS development tasks. So there's a fancy tool. So in every programming language, there are some build tool. Like for example, Java has the Maven or Gradle. Ruby has Ruby gems. Python have pips, something like that. But the Fastlane is getting very popular in iOS world. So that can automate your entire build. So entire thing like required for building, testing, analyzing can be automated via Fastlane. So build automation can be easily done by Fastlane. As every language has a package managers, right? So the iOS also has a set of package manager that is very different from website world or API world. So they got CocoaPods, Carthage, Swift package manager. Swift package manager is very new at the moment. It's not production ready, but Carthage and CocoaPods, they are a different package management system than probably you guys able to might not be familiar, but this is the so in the Linux, we got like a Red Hat or the Ubuntu. We have like different package managers like a Yum. You can install packages with Yum or apt-get. So in a similar way, macOS has the Homebrew, and MacPort is another one, but the Homebrew is a popular one. So we can install list of packages on any macOS server using Homebrew. It just did get a source code, compile it, and put the binary into your user local bin or whatever your path. So another thing about dealing with this, setting up the CI server is this is very Apple specific thing, which we need a development certificate and the provisioning profiles. So you need them to code sign your app. So you can't submit app without code signing. So you need those things on your CI server. So we need to provision that as well. So most of the companies, they're doing the setting up the CI server is a huge task. So basically, an engineer has to babysit with all the software, install Xcode, all the package managers, all the maybe Ruby gems, or everything that needed to be set up has to be done manually. The provisioning profile, distribution certificate, also done manually, which is very, very time consuming. And Apple used to release the new version of Xcode very frequently. So if they need to give it a try, then the engineer has to spend another day to, just to reinstall everything. So, just is quite a manual, time-consuming task, and it's not worth of engineers' time to do these things manually. So, as compared to the Linux world, you have ability, like you have a Docker and everything, so you can just destroy your environment, recreate it. So, in iOS world, we don't have that flexibility. So, it's a very time-consuming thing. So why provisioning? So basically, that's the point of maybe the configuration management tools. So yeah, the first thing is avoid the repetitive manual work. And another thing is, so this is a problem when we have with developer testers, or maybe on CI server. You got something running on local machine that doesn't work on CI server, so we have to say no to the works on my machine things. Another benefit would be, as you can imagine, that infrastructure as a code. So everything is put into your code. So there's no manual steps when you want to provision or running your script on server. So everything is coded. And last one is ability to reset and reconfigure the infrastructure, which is the main advantage. So in Apple ecosystem, so there's if environment is messed up, say for example provisioning profile and everything messed up, it's just very time consuming to go down and find the root cause. The better way to destroy it and recreate it. So that's the best option. So I was looking into the various choices when I come to the iOS and provisioning. So how we can better provisioning the iOS ecosystem. So I come up with some tool. So first of all, I gone with this guy, so Bash. So Bash script is a good friend. So write to Bash script, run it everywhere, regardless of, you don't need to install anything. It just it's a simple. But if you see one of the command from Xcode build, it's like a maybe 3-4 lines long command, and it's not feasible to write a Bash script with this long command. So then I look into the Chef, because Chef has a good community, good cookbooks around there, and also there are some build essential cookbooks specially designed for the macOS. That comes handy because we don't need to do the repetitive work about doing that in Ansible. But the Chef, as a learning curve for Chef, is a huge. And I tried to learn Chef, even though I did a Ruby for quite a few times. So I find it the Chef is like, it's too much. It's a client server, different keychains and stuff. So I just gave up. And I found the Ansible, and I got up and running with Ansible within very few time, very less time. So basically, it's just a YAML, but whatever the things with Ansible is doing under the hood is with the Python, but I can get started with Ansible very quickly, so I prefer Ansible. Then I came to know that the Ansible is the main core developers for Ansible from Red Hat. It's basically the Linux company, and I'm trying to do that with iOS, which is strange, but I want to give it a try and see if the Ansible can do the things for iOS as well. So say hello Ansible, let me give it a try. As I said earlier, so the macOS servers are not Linux server. So Ansible is designed to be work on Linux. Then the software that we need to install on the servers are the Apple's own software. You can't download without having an account, or they are not free. Like you can get lots of packages, CM packages for free. You just make a list and download it, but it's not the luxury in iOS ecosystem or the Apple ecosystem. You have to have a proper Apple developer account to download those software. So that's the major challenge. So there are not so many roles designed for the macOS for Ansible. So I browsed the Ansible Galaxy and found that's very few roles. One of the most challenging role I found is a homebrew one. So that was one of the starting point for me just to get started with on macOS server. And also I found the Ansible modules. There are so many modules that can do the stuff like on Linux, but there are very few modules that can be run for like macOS. There's only one module I can find with the homebrew, but if I want to use the Ansible for iOS, then I have to write my own module in Python and then use it with a YAML. And then the biggest challenge is testing the macOS roles. So for example, if you create a role, Ansible role for a macOS, how do you test it? So on Linux, you can get a Docker container. So create a Docker container, run your Ansible script, and tear down the Docker container. That's easy. But in macOS world, there are no containerization yet. So only option is either you have to use the Vagrant, create a VM. The VM is huge in size and it's not lightweight. So you have to create a VM, you have to tear down the VM, recreate the VM, and run your script, which is very time consuming. Or find any cloud-based CI server like Travis or Circle and run your script there. But they already messed up with their images, like they already installed so many software. You have to uninstall it, then reinstall it. That's another piece of those. So testing macOS roles with Ansible is so much challenge. But yeah, so Ansible automates everything, so no problem. So let's consider the Xcode installation. So how do you, in your company, if someone says we want to provision the Xcode installation, how do you do that? So one of the option is you can't get the Xcode zip file. It comes with a zip file, and you can't get that for free. You have to have an Apple developer account to download that file. And another thing you can do is you have to host it somewhere. You can't download all the time because it is a 4 gig file, and if you try to download it all the time, you will be wasting lots of your time. So you need to get that file, host it on your server. So this is just example what we did. Like the company has their own private Samba server. So we hosted the Xcode zip file on there, and then from that file we can mount our CI server location to that the hosted server, and then we can just open and Xcode and install the Xcode and their command line tools. So there are so many things they're already there online, or just we did it ourselves. So install the package, install the additional commands. Yeah, so in that way you have to do the Xcode installation. Then the homebrew packages. There's already homebrew module on Ansible, so that becomes fairly easy. So you just list the name of module, and that will be installed for you. So iOS development has many dependencies on Ruby, because they got their package manager called CocoaPods, has to be installed via Ruby gems. They got their Fastlane tool, which is written as a Ruby gem. So you need to have a Ruby installed, and installing the Ruby on macOS. macOS comes with the default 2.0 Ruby, which is quite old, but installing the newer version of Ruby is quite challenging, because you need to use the software like a RVM or RBM, so you can have a Ruby version manager so that you can change the Ruby version whenever you want. So yeah, so there's no Ansible module to do that. You have to run your bash script or things like that to get that working. So another thing is if you want to set up the CI server, then probably if you're macOS server, then there are various default settings, like you don't want the animations, or you don't want the CI server to sleep, so you need to configure the settings. And another thing is software update, because if you have macOS, then it will ask you to update software, and you do not do that automatically, so you have to turn that off. So you have to do the lots of setting on CI server. So that can be done in this script. There are some CI specific settings. For example, you may be using Jenkins or maybe TeamCity or Xcode server. So you have to do, for example, if you're doing Jenkins, then you have to download the Jenkins package, or for the TeamCity. So we didn't wait for the TeamCity, which is you have to download that build agent. We have to have the server, and we have to download the build agent, and then add your TeamCity configuration. So you need to have that the properties file you need to copy over and the stuff like that. So yeah, and we need to start that TeamCity agent whenever we want to provisioning your server. You need to do these things like downloading the package, adding this agent to the TeamCity server. So that also has to be done via Ansible. Yeah, so I'm not sure it's readable, but yeah, this is how example playbook looks like basically. So we need to have some variables like Xcode source, so that we can change the version of Xcode. The Ruby version, so we want to, which version of Ruby you want to install. Probably TeamCity specific, then macOS sleep option, so set sleep never, set hard disk sleep never, set computer sleep never. So that's what CI server has to do. Otherwise, if CI server sleeps, then we can't run our builds. Then software update off. Then we got the homebrew install package. Then we can have a long list. This is short list, but this we can have a long list. Then the tabs we want to use with the homebrew, and then the actual file, YAML file, we need to include. This is a very basic one. So if you want to try, I have created a sample code how we did that. This is not the exact code, but this is kind of a get started guide. If you see the Ansible Galaxy, I pushed this iOS dev role. So if you can have a look, there's a bit of code. And it's obviously I can also have it on GitHub. Yeah. So so while we designing the roles or the playbooks, so as I mentioned, like the challenges is first of all, I got some Vagrant boxes available on Vagrant boxes website. So they basically have they don't have the newest version of iOS, the macOS, but they got the previous version. So you can get that box, and you can play your Ansible playbook on that box, and then you have to destroy that box. And if you want to make a changes and test it again, then you have to do that again. So that was very time-consuming process. So I prepared to use make a use of Travis CI, because Travis CI has their own images. Like they use a Packer, I think the Packer and VMware, they create images for each macOS system with a predefined software installed on that. And yeah, so that comes with handy, like we already know what version of software is already installed, and so that's a bit easy for me to test it. So once I push code, then it's getting executed on fresh Travis CI VM. And yeah, so it's yeah, the Travis CI executions looks something like that. It's a normal kind of Ansible execution. So you see that, this is is run, so this is done, so I can have at least good confidence, like, okay, this is working well, at least in VM. So when you trying to install the real servers, then obviously it's gonna work. Yeah, so having done that, all sort of setup and having the all sort of infrastructure setting, so what benefits we got as infrastructure as a code? Because we put our Ansible playbook inside our iOS project. So every time we make a build, it's gonna provision first. So any changes, then we come to know, okay, this has been changed, this has been not changed. So Ansible has ability, like if this is already installed or they're already done, so it's not touching anything, it just carry on execution. So that was a quick win, like infrastructure as a code. Say for example, we messed up our CI server with something, like we installed some crazy thing, or provisioning profile messed up, then we don't waste a lot of time, just kill that machine, rebuild it, and that's very handy. So distribution certificate, provisioning profile has to be installed from scratch. So we got the fresh machine, so it's ready to take the builds. Yeah, so Apple changes the Xcode version. So they pushes the new feature, and we want to give it a try whether our existing app already works with the new version of Xcode. Then yeah, there is the ability to switch between the Xcode versions. So we just need to specify, we just to get the zip file, put it somewhere, and we can try our app building on different version of Xcode as well. Yeah, so reset the CI server machine, and yeah, another benefit is streamline the configuration of local and CI server. So there's no complaints about, like, okay, my test works in my local machine but it's failing on CI server, because everything has been, your iOS developer's local machine has also been provisioned with the same Ansible role. Also the CI server machine is also provisioned with the same Ansible role, so there is no software difference between your local machine and your CI server. So that's quite handy. Yeah, these are some blog posts. I shared my experience in detail, how we set up the continuous delivery pipeline using the Parslane and Ansible. This is some of the resources. And I think that's it from my side. Anybody has any questions?
Have you also tried using cloud services?
Sorry?
Have you also tried using the cloud services yourself?
Just one sec, we'll just wait for the...
Okay, does that work? Yes, I think it's working. Have you also tried using the cloud services yourself, like Travis and so on?
Yes, yeah, that's one of the example I showed you, is with the Travis, and it really helps using Travis or Circle CI, because they already done the work, like launching the fresh VM, so okay, we don't need to. Yeah.
But you didn't. So I mean, you're building onto your own CI server. Did you find that improved the stability compared to? Yeah.
So basically, I use Travis or the cloud services to test the things, because we don't have an infrastructure to pay for the cloud services. We have our own Mac Mini servers. So this thing I told you, it doesn't applicable for the cloud, because cloud is already provisioned, right? So this is something you want to do for like a self-hosted CI server. So if you have like a maybe bunch of server, you have to manage yourself. So if it's cloud, then it is already managed by the cloud. So we don't have to deal with them. So Ansible doesn't fit on the cloud, because cloud has already provisioned and managed. So this is things I use cloud for testing. So if I want to test one of my roles and one of my scripts, then I use cloud. Then when I want to run on real machines, real physical machines, physical servers, then I use those scripts, run it on machines. And Ansible has a SSH ability. So once you configure the remote, then you have like 5 Mac Mini servers. Then I can launch the same script on the 5 Mac Mini servers. So that is quite handy.
Thank you. How long did it take you to get all this together? The lessons and the practicality of setting it all up?
So we tried maybe a couple of months. So we started like experimenting provisioning option because we had lots of issues coming from CI server, because CI server has been manually configured and we don't know what version of software is installed there. So so we think like this is the time-consuming step and we have to fix it somehow. So we have to have some sort of configuration, like same for developer, same for CI. So it took 2 months to get experimentation done. So this role, I made it open source, but within our company, we wrote more complex stuff like handling the states and blah, blah, blah. So it took like 2 or 3 months to get everything working as expected.
Any other questions? Cool. So obviously, as you hopefully all aware that. So I'm just being gesticulated where to hold the microphone. Is that good? Thank you. Obviously, as you probably know, Red Hat acquired Ansible a year and a half, 2 years ago. We do actively focus on other areas. For example, recently we've just doubled the amount of paid developers we've got working on a Windows platform. There's really interesting stuff we can see here going on with the Apple side and likewise with the networking. So although the cloud and the microservice, of which we'll have some talks on later, are sort of the up and coming and the more sexy sort of thing of it, there's a lot of other stuff going on. So my first part of Ansible and my previous job was using it to configure and manage a few hundred different blade systems, all physical machines. So it's interesting to see how different people are using stuff. And there was something else I was going to mention. Oh yeah, we mentioned Ansible Galaxy. Show of hands, who knows what Ansible Galaxy is? Okay, let's do that the other way. Who's not heard of Ansible Galaxy? Okay, a few. So Ansible Galaxy is a way of accessing and downloading other roles that people have written, and it's got a voting system. Basically, it's a very nice wrap around the GitHub interface. So you can put roles on GitHub, you can vote for them, you can say certain roles work on different Linux or Apple distributions, and you can vote on them and then find some stuff. If you want to know more about this, there's a few people in the audience, looking at no one in particular, that have written a few hundred of those. Please do have a look at that. For those of you that are already using it, what I'd nicely ask you to do is, if you find a role useful, give it a star. It sort of helps weed out the roles that aren't quite as useful and makes it easier for people in the future. Thanks. I'm just going to quickly see if the pizza's arrived. If not, we'll have another talk. So thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause, please?
Thank you.
Sorry, just so I don't mispronounce your first name. Zsolt. Hi everyone. Hopefully everyone's fed and watered now. Good work on demolishing all the pizza. I thought I'd ordered too much, but glad to see I was proved wrong there. Can I have an honest show of hands for the pizza? Did we get a thumbs up, thumbs down? Are we happy with that? Excellent. New company, so I'm glad they've done their job, so that's good to hear. Right, well, don't want to listen to me, so I'm going to pass you over to Zsolt, who's going to be talking about exactly what it says on the screen. So, yeah, exactly.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. Thank you. So, just a little bit of introduction, as usual. So, good. Yeah, I'm Zsolt. I was working as a dev for many years, Java development most of the time. I was doing lots of different things, starting as a junior dev, senior, lead dev. At some point I was a BA, architect, even a PM. I was even a PM, yeah. But at the end of the day, I realized that actually that's not the thing I like to do. Doing development is fine, doing architecture is fine, but the more interesting things to do is something to do with operations. I mean, you can go in and all the real problems, the everyday issues are happening on the ops level. So I quit my job and I ended up working for the company called InfinityWorks, and I'm not doing a sales pitch here, and I started to do proper DevOps, I think. So now this thing is that create some stuff. We won't create because it takes a couple of minutes, so I skip that part. And let's assume that I create things here. And if we go, a thing called, I see, I have to authenticate, I guess. No, in fact not. So I created two environments using some CloudFormation scripts. Anyone familiar with CloudFormation? Okay, yeah, good enough. Basically, it's a way of defining your environment in AWS. You can do other stuff. You can use Terraform. You can even use Ansible if you really like to. But I opted for CloudFormation because just I like CloudFormation. So you log into the console. You say create stack. You choose your template. You click on next. Yeah, you choose a name. Test of 4. Well, good enough. You click on next, and I move this thing a little. And you create, and it happens. And in a couple of minutes, half an hour, 2 hours later, when you had your nice lunch, it depends. It depends. It can be really long. You have your environment up and running. So we have two environments, so that's good. Now let me talk a little bit about this layering thing, and I think that's kind of important. At least this is how I do things. When I'm about to create an environment, first I start something with the so-called physical layer. It's not really physical anymore. I mean, we just had a chat, and it's all application and software-defined stuff. But a couple of years ago, it was all physical. You were bringing servers in, you were provisioning all your networks using routers and all these network components and cables and all these things. You're not really doing that anymore. You define everything as a script, let's say in this way. So you can use CloudFormation if you want to. You can use Terraform. You can use Ansible, as I said, Puppet, Chef, all these things. They can help you to create this cloud of yours, your physical layer, which includes the VPC, the network, scaling groups, ELBs, RDS, lots of things. What you end up with is a fabric, a network fabric, and a few servers doing nothing. It's just their provision. So next thing will be is to use some kind of tooling, and we are on Ansible Meetup, so yeah, talk about Ansible, to configure your application servers. They're not doing too much at this point. NTP. And I call that NTP out because I've seen so many cases NTP is not defined, not configured, and in your estate you're running servers. Some are communicating with China, some are communicating with UTC, and there are just funny stuff can come up with that. So NTP do that all the time. And some other stuff. You want to install GVM, you want to install some additional packages, SSH hardening, all kind of things. And this is all done by Ansible. And the green bit here, now this is what I want to cover. It is about application deployment, as in the developers are developing something, they're writing a nice monolith in Java, why not? And you need to deploy that into 25 different servers. You can do that in Ansible. If you like to, you can do something else. So let's imagine an environment. Actually, this is something I built, but so you got this whole thing here, that big box, that is the VPC. We got various subnets, mostly private subnets. We got some RDS instances, we got some database instances, application server, Apache running somewhere here, ELBs are up there, all kinds of stuff. And not to mention that thing on the left-hand side, which is how they're managing all this thing. Now, we won't build that. It's no point. It's absolutely pointless. This is what we build. It's very simple. It is just for us to show that how the dynamic inventory can work. Now, imagine you have this. I don't know how many. Let's say 25 different servers, you're having 5 different environments, so now 125 servers, and you have to write host files for that. It's not necessarily the best thing to do. You can, Yeah, of course you can go, you can dig in, you can spend half a day doing that, validating everything. But perhaps that's not the right approach. Yeah, you can have host files, you can have multiple host files, you can have groups, all these kinds of things. But this is fairly static. And if we're talking about the cloud, and I think that's really important to note, if we're talking about the cloud, we're not talking about a static environment. We're talking about a dynamic environment. Okay, so let's say we build this thing, or we just build this one. It doesn't matter. You go home, you go sleep, you come back next morning, and what you see is just an email from AWS saying, oh, by the way, we terminated your instance. It happens, honest, it happened with me a couple of times. What can you do in that case? What you can do is, you log back into the console, you try to figure out what went down, what are the IPs, I have to spin up a new instance, yeah, all right, I did that, what is the new IP, yeah, okay, update the host files, all these things. It's the time consuming and fairly boring and lots of people shouting. It's not really good. I mean, you know, in this case, people are angry, usually. Something went down. So there is another way of doing that, and that is the dynamic approach. Yeah, so you're not writing the inventory file by hand. What you do is you use a script to generate that inventory file. I'm not sure whether I put this somewhere or not. Oh, yeah. If we go to this one, that is the Ansible's GitHub repository. You can see plenty different dynamic inventory scripts. Basically, they do all the same. You run the script, and it will generate an inventory file. So what comes out is just a snippet of one of the environments I created. And this is how it looks. Now, if you look at that, that means if you really need to, you can address the EC2 hosts, and that will call out to 3110 and 31199. You can call just the Bastion host, it will go to 10, or just the Apache 199. What is important is you have to do consistent tagging. If you don't have a tag on your instances, and you have 25 instances, what you end up with is EC2, all the 25 instances. How do you address those? I mean, you can go by IP, but if you go by IP, then we go back to the original way of doing things. So let's try to see how it works, and yeah. Sorry? Oh yeah, I will in a second. Yeah, sure. Oops, that's not the one. Unfortunately, that doesn't work. So, bigger. Yeah, all right. Nice one. Is it fine? Cool. So this is a dev environment, which should be like CloudFormation. Yeah, I think that is the dev environment, let's say. And the other one is the test environment, but it doesn't really matter. If we go for O2 dev, then, yeah, if you go to O2 dev, then you see these two. 31242 and 22363, and if we run the script and everything works fine, then it will return our inventory file. Does it look right? 22363. Not really. Yeah, it will be interesting to figure out what I'm doing here. Yeah, anyway. So, Inventory file, yeah. You can download that inventory file from GitHub, the script itself, and there is an ini file for every inventory file, and you can do things like, I want to filter by region. I'm not interested in every region, I'm interested in EU West only. Because we are sitting behind a bastion, we can't go by public address, we want to use the private IP addresses. We don't want to, we are not interested in RDS, it's not needed. And we don't want to do different kinds of grouping. We're interested in grouping by keys, for example. Or we want to see the instances what don't have tags. So you can configure this ini file, and if it works correct and your configuration is fine, it will produce a nice output like that with all the instances. And that you can use as a basis in your script. So that's one thing. The other is that now this part you can do in many different ways. You can do with an SSH config file, you can do using hostvars, you can do using the Ansible config file. Point is, if you do SSH proxy and you write something similar to that, then you can have a set of scripts which is always the same. You don't need to make a picture because it's available in GitHub, so you can take this. Everything is up there, and you can reuse if you like to. You can have everything as a package, and what changes only is the EC2 ini file for the dynamic inventory script. So you can apply exactly the same thing onto as many environments as you like, because the only thing what changes here is this little bit, the stack ID. What it does basically with SSH, and Ansible is running over SSH, you can do a proxy command, so you can chain various hops across the network. In this environment, we're having a Bastion host as a standard practice. The Bastion host is where you can log in using SSH, and the Bastion is transferring your commands onto the server you're trying to manage. But again, because this is a dynamic environment, we don't want to specify the IP. So somewhere here, which is starting at this point, there is a command up to here. We're just trying to figure out what is the IP of the Bastion. For that, you have to do filters. And that's why I said tagging is really important, because what we're trying to do is to say the instance state is running. Obviously, there is no point to trying to find something which is terminated already. And we would like to say an instance where the name is Bastion, Ansible, and so on, which is a consistent naming in consistent tagging in your environment. And yeah, some AWS CLI magic here. Yeah, you can do it otherwise. The point is that we don't need to return everything back. What we're interested in is only just the public IP address. And that public IP address goes into the proxy command, so you can proxy all your SSH commands across the Bastion host. Yeah, there is a predefined network range up here, so we're not addressing anything. You don't do that. Yeah, you can define system-wide SSH config. You don't want to do that again. It should stay with your project only. Maybe if you really want to, you can go down to specifying this at the environment level. Maybe you don't want to do that. Now, it's all good, but because the stack ID is the selector here, if you don't have a script, there is really easy to say that, oh, I'm trying to something out in the dev environment, and all of a sudden, oops, that went into production because you just exported the stack ID and you didn't forget to unset it. Yes, it happened. Yes, I did that. Yes, I know. It's not fun. Putting the two or three together, SSH, you have to do lots of filtering. You have to have consistent tagging on your instances, and you have to use environment variables. Now, I try to make this work. So, again, as they used to say, the demo gods, if they are with me, that will be good. So we're trying to address now the O2 dev, which is up here, and it is like that. I think it should be a 502, unfortunately not. So I have to kill the instance, just to prove the point. It's not the bastion. O2. We don't have that, it's just test. It's all fine. And by the way, you shouldn't click on the console if you're doing any kind of automation. But yeah, we all know that. So it will take a time when it goes down, but DCRB should say 503. If the instance goes down proper, it should say 502. I just need to. Oh yeah, okay. That's why. We see, but I guess unfortunately I jumped ahead a little. Yeah, what I'm doing here is that I'm using auto-scaling groups. So whenever an instance goes down, because of whatever reason, it can be reason by AWS, it can be you as a reason terminating the instance, the auto-scaling group should realize that's happening, and sooner or later it will start to spin up a new instance. How long will it take? It depends, but it's a good exercise. You can see that how long an outage takes when something goes down and you don't have enough servers serving your traffic. As you see, still 503, nothing is happening. At this point, everyone gets nervous a little. Yeah, you see. Yeah, it's still happening. Yeah, so that's why I didn't start. The same thing, it started 54, well, I don't know. What time is it now? I can't see that. It's happening in a good 10 minutes now. Yeah, Amazon is a bit slow today. Right. Here we are. That's the instance coming up. And what we're expecting is 502, but I think it will just come up proper. What I was trying to show, but as I said, I already updated the stack, is that we're having a stack which is running, but nothing is provisioned yet. So in order for that to happen, you have to go in, you have to run the Ansible script with the necessary configuration, and if everything is fine, but it's not, yeah, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to have the credentials up and running. If you don't do that, it won't work, obviously. Sorry? Yeah. So when the authentication is up and running and you have all the credentials, then it will ping the servers and it starts to provision Apache onto the box. Now everything is green, and the reason why it's green is because I already updated the stack. The difference would be that if the stack is just spun up in this fashion, as in it is only physical coming up, it's nothing to do with the application, then you have to run Ansible to provision everything. But again, you terminate the instance goes. Again, you come in the morning, you have to do the same thing again. You can automate this. I mean, what I was doing is just me, an educated monkey, pushing the buttons in a right order. Everyone can do that. You can use things like SNS or Lambda and SES or something. Every state change in AWS is having an event. You can subscribe to that event and you can trigger stuff. So, for example, you can plug in Jenkins. Why not? You can plug in TeamCity just to update your instances. I get used to think that this is less secure. It's you have to have all this configuration in the outside world communicating back to your estate. It's not necessarily good. Yeah, you can have the controller in the estate, but again, you have to come into that estate somehow. And it's not that kind of bad automation. So there is another way, saying bootstrapping. And bootstrapping uses the cloud init. It was done by Ubuntu, Canonical. I know that this is Red Hat even, but yeah, here we are. And the idea is that when you're running cloud init, when the EC2 instance is coming up, or any Linux is coming up, there is a standard way of 5 minutes, provisioning files, running commands on your instance. In this case, we're pulling down files from S3, which is a bucket, storage. We're installing Ansible, we install some dependencies, and we're deploying Apache using hosts, localhost. And this is what you've seen before, that if I go here, instead of 503, I didn't do too much. Bad gateway, good. That's really good. So, in theory, we can run this. But, point being, with the bootstrap, we're trying to pull down the bootstrap script, the YAML file, which is the playbook, and the Ansible Galaxy requirements. We can go here. Simple as that. We install Ansible in the box. We're running Ansible Galaxy, running Ansible playbook. In the playbook, the localhost, and we just install Apache on the box. So it's fairly simple. Nothing has been changed, so I guess it will be 502 again. No, in fact, it went up. So yeah, thoughts about the thing. Good thing is no supervision required. You can leave the thing alone. When the instance goes down, auto-scaling group brings the instance up, and it just provisions itself. It's way quicker because it's pull. The instance going out. There is nothing to be configured at the outside world, so it's way safer. And we can close down port 22. That's always a good thing. Well, you can't manage from the outside with Ansible, but that's a different story. And there is no limit to scale. I mean, you can have as many instances you like. The only limit is how much the S3 buckets can handle. They can handle a lot. Right. Takeaways. Consistent naming. Tag all your resources. Without that, you can't do proper filtering. You have to keep the environments in a separate folder so that you can't accidentally do stuff. So that's make it easy, but don't make that easy that you can unnecessarily provision something into the production. When you can do automation, be as simple as you can. That's the best way always. There is a GitHub repo, everything up there you can see. I need to do the README, but you can take away, you can have the SSH config if you like, you can have the CloudFormation script, it's free for all. And the potato, as a takeaway. Yeah, any questions?
Why not chips?
Why not?
Why not chips?
Why not chips? Yeah, that someone else said the same thing, and you're right, it should be in chips. Yeah, pretty much.
So you mentioned that.
Oh, sorry, who's speaking?
Him.
You've mentioned this hooking up to Amazon events and doing some dynamic, things, magic.
Yeah.
Did you actually do it? Can you expand on this? What actually have you managed to do with that?
We did that, not in this one, because it's way more complicated and it is more like a AWS kind of way of doing stuff. You have to set up the trigger. That trigger usually triggers an SNS topic, sends the event to that SNS topic. You're having a Lambda function which is listening on the SNS topic, and from that Lambda function you trigger something. A Jenkins box, for example, but that means lots of hops, and you have to have configuration built in to the Lambda function and the config. Additional layers of what needs to be automated just to have something so simple that the instance comes up. Not always the right thing to do.
I was just pretty much curious whether it's worth doing. Would that be the right way to do it? Because to be honest, I've never heard of this approach, but it sounded like something which is kind of doable.
If you're doing more complicated things, maybe you want to do that. It depends. Situation. Anyone else?
Any other questions?
I've got one question, don't bother with that. Why full model instead of like Packer and Ansible to generate baked AMIs?
That's another way of doing stuff. But even though when you're doing an AMI, most probably there will be a point during the life cycle when you have to go in and you have to reconfigure the instance, what you're building up, because IPs change, endpoints change. You might want to put that into a cluster or something. Yes, you can do an AMI, and that might be the right approach, but at some point you still have to do some kind of management stuff. And because I wanted to show how can you do dynamic inventory instead of how you can do AMI, that's all.
So is it something you would recommend, or?
Sorry?
Just an example. Is the Ansible pool model just an example for this talk, or is it something you would recommend depending upon the...
I was using that. In this presentation I was thinking maybe that's the right thing to show, that's all, nothing else. The thing is, there are 5, 6, 7 different ways of doing stuff. This is 2 examples how you can do. That's all. Anyone else? Good. All right. Thank you. Cheers.
Let's leave on that.
Yeah, here we go.
Cool, thank you very much for that. And now if it's Jiri.
Yeah, hello. My name is Jiri Tyr, and I came to talk about some problems I encountered while experiencing Ansible and its inventory. At the beginning of my presentation, I wanted to ask the same questions like John, how many people are using Ansible, how many are new to it. And one of the questions was also, who came just for pizza, but I guess it's too late to ask. So I will just progress with my presentation. So a little bit about myself. So I've been using Ansible for about 3 years. I contributed to Ansible by creating several modules, some Jinja 2 filter, fixing some bugs, and doing occasionally some code review. I'm also author of nearly 100 publicly available Ansible roles, which you can find on my GitHub site and also in the Galaxy portal. So why I was unhappy with the standard Ansible inventory. Well, I've been in a situation where I was managing a relatively big environment, which counted more than 1,000 VMs, a lot of environments. It was spread across multiple clouds. It was a relatively static environment, but there was no conventions, or there was several conventions. So something like having dynamic inventory, like my colleague in the previous presentation mentioned, was quite difficult because there was no metadata assigned to the VMs and so on. So I kind of had to go for the static inventory. I wanted to make my life also a little bit easy, so I wanted to use the same code base, having the same playbooks, having the same inventory for all VMs, and having the same set of roles. Because, you know, for example, if you're installing Nginx with Ansible, then you probably don't want to use, you know, different roles in different environments or different clouds. You want to use the same role, just with different parameters. And I also wanted to reduce the data redundancy in the variable files. So I think that the first presentation showed how Ansible is very strong on this side, because the person was just firing bash commands, but was using the variables from Ansible to make his commands more dynamic. And that's what makes Ansible, I think, very strong, that you basically define your variables and they propagate wherever you want. So I wanted to reduce the amount of data I had to write for each of the environment or each of the role and so on. So I wanted to share the same variables across the environments. Some of the variables are absolutely the same for all the environments, like some basic setting of, I don't know, SSH daemon and things like that. Some are almost the same, so it's like 90% the same parameters, but just few are different. And so I wanted something what would provide something like hierarchical variable inheritance and overrides. So basically, variable defined in a higher environment or higher Ansible group would provide the variables through all the stack unless we override it somewhere deeper in the stack. It might sound difficult, but it's actually not that difficult because it looks something like this. So for those who are new to Ansible, this is how the static inventory looks like. It's very similar to ini file, what we can know from Windows environment. So instead of the sections, we have in the square brackets name of the group. So this is actually the group, and inside the group is the host. The group can have some special keywords, like here you can see children, which is saying that children of this group is actually this group. Yeah. So if you look at this, then Azure group has a children Azure Dev, which is this group, which has children Azure Dev DMZ, which is actually this group, and that group has children, which is Azure Dev DMZ Bastion, which is actually this group. So actually we created a chain of groups, but what's interesting is that if we define a variable for this group, then that variable is transparent to all the environments, right? Unless we override it somewhere on the way down, right? So that's one of the things which makes the variable redundancy feasible here. We can see also the relationship between the groups in this YAML file, which is actually also inventory file, which is officially supported by Ansible. So you can write inventory files in YAML format. Can you raise a hand who knew before that you can use YAML for this? Only one hand, 2 hands, 3 hands, five hands. So yeah, so you can use it. But as many of you that don't even know about it, then I will continue in this ini file format. So we have the same inventory as I shown before, and here we see the group vars. So the group vars, you can have different kind of like variables. You have group variables, you can have also host variables, but for the groups, you store it in the directory group vars. In the group vars directory, we can have, I think that I'm running out of battery. So in the group vars directory, we can have files, which actually, the name of the file corresponds with the name of the group. So we can have, like, for each of the group, we can have a file, or it does not have to be file, but it can be a directory. Inside the directory can be other files. So basically, variables for that group are loaded from any file stored in the directory. And the files in the directory are read in alphabetical order, right? Actually, I forgot to mention that that's actually the only level of segregation you can actually have. Only one directory in the group vars. You can't have like directory Azure/dev/dmz/bastion. That's not possible. Ansible would not understand it. So only one level of directories or files. That's it. Also, if you want to store some secrets, then you either use some external storage for the passwords, and then you can query it through the Jinja filters, or you can use classical Ansible Vault, which is a file encrypted, and then when you're running Ansible, you provide it with a password or key, and it encrypts it while it runs. So again, the Vault files are stored usually in the group vars as well. People use like Vault underscore and then the name of the group, but I like to use the extension Vault to recognize between the group file and the Vault file. The problem here is that the Vault file here is not loaded automatically by Ansible, because Ansible loads only the group vars which correspond with the existing group defined in the inventory file. So this file would not be loaded. So in order to load it, you have to use either vars files in the playbook definition or include vars task, right? So the file should exist, if you want to load it with one of these, and it's kind of difficult to maintain the hierarchy of all the var files you can have in all the different levels of the inventory. And as this is, as the file can be stored in the group vars, then it can be also stored in a directory. So in that case, the Vault file would be loaded. But as I said, it would be loaded in the alphabetical order. So for example, I wanted to have the Vault files be loaded first, and then the group vars file, right? So in order to achieve it, you have to prepend it with something what changes the order of these two files, right? Which is not very handy, but yeah, it's doable. So there is another way how to actually achieve the automatic Vault file loading, and it is by defining an inventory group which has the name of the Vault file, right? So this is the same inventory as you could see before, but in front of every group there is the same group name .vault, and again we create the chain. So the Azure Vault has children Azure, then Azure has child Azure Dev Vault, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it basically creates the same kind of chain. And another issue with the standard Ansible inventory files is reusability of the variable files. So basically, if we have a service and we want to use the same configuration across multiple environments, then what we have to do, we either have to copy the whole variable file under the name of the other group where we want the same settings, or we put it somewhere aside and we create a symlink, right? And it suffers of the same issues like the Word files, right? So creating hierarchy of such things is very, very difficult. So again, you can overcome this difficulty by creating an extra groups. So basically the DMZ, if we have a template for jump servers, then we can put it in the list of children, and that means that there is another group which is defined here, yeah. And in that case, the variables from that file will be automatically loaded, right? And in the group vars, it looks like this. So we basically have like the name of the group, and then some sign like this, and then the template. And that corresponds to something like we have directory template, for example, and the file jump, right? So like this, we can share the same file across different groups and have basically templates in the variable files. So that all works. You know, I tested it, I was quite happy with it, but I was not happy with the complexity of it, because it's a nightmare to, you know, maintain the same naming, the conventions, and make no mistakes while creating this kind of chaining structure and so on. So I created a dynamic inventory, which is a script, which does actually all what I mentioned before for you, for free, right? So you create your inventory in a YAML format. The format is slightly better than the original one, which you have, you know, supported by Ansible. It allows you to split that YAML inventory into multiple files, which is not normally supported in the YAML files, because you can't refer in a YAML file to another file. You have to basically have just one file and that's it. Yeah, there is no external references. But my dynamic directory supports it, and also you could notice that whenever I defined a group, I had to actually repeat the whole whole structure of the group, right? Like the Azure Dev DMZ Basin. That was the name of the group, right? So my inventory does not require this. If you creating new groups, it depends where in the tree of the YAML structure it is, and so it creates the final group name from you know, the depth of where the group is located in the YAML file. So it itself generates the group names. It also allows you to read the variable files from completely different directory than group vars, and in the directory you can structure it basically the same way as you structure the YAML file. So you have like group inside another group, and so on, and the same is the directory structure. You have a directory inside another directory, inside another directory. It's up to you how many levels you want, right? It also automatically creates all the groups and the linking between two groups to load the Vault files automatically for you. It supports all the templating, so if you create template, you just mention, I want to load this template into this group, and it's done for you automatically. And it also allows you to add hosts from local group to completely different group, or import hosts from completely different group, or even groups, into current group through a regular expression, right? So all this is done by one script. It's completely transparent to the user. The user does not have to do anything, just write YAML inventory. That's it. To install it, just clone the repository locally into this directory, create a symlink to the hosts file, which you then use as a inventory when you run Ansible playbook. That's it. Simple as that. Yeah. And this is how the YAML inventory looks like. So this is basically the dependencies between the groups. So Azure, Dev, DMZ, Bastion, and inside the Bastion we have a special keyword, hosts, which is saying that what follows is the list of hosts belonging to the Bastion group, right? The keywords are start with the colon. As I said, you can kind of like split the content of the YAML file. So this is still one file, but I want to show you that you can actually create some kind of structure where you load another bit of the YAML structure here. But my dynamic inventory allows you to do things like this, that you have the main one where you reference content from another file. So that's the content, that's the reference which you use here, and it is completely different file, right? And how it actually works is that before I start processing the YAML file, I just concatenate all the YAML files in that inventory directory, right? So variables for that inventory. So we have inventory directory, and there we have the main inventory file, which can load other, subparts of that inventory. And then in that inventory directory we have vars directory, which is something like the group vars, but it allows you to have multiple levels there. And again, it works very similar to group vars. Either the variable file is as a file or as a directory, and then it's expected there is all file called all, which actually holds the variables for that group, right? But we can have it for any of the groups. So it's Azure/all, it's for the Azure, right? It's for Dev. We can also have, if we create a Vault file, it's automatically loaded, so variables stored in the Vault file are automatically loaded for the Dev group. Yeah. When the dynamic inventory script runs, it actually creates symlinks into the group vars. This is, otherwise Ansible would not understand it where to load the groups, right? So, as I showed before, it creates the group names, as Ansible is expecting it, but it points to a specific file in the inventory vars directory, right? Templates are, very simple. You just say, okay, Bastion group has a template called template jump. You store the, this should be, sorry, inventory/vars. There is a typo here. So in the inventory/vars/template jump, that's actually referring to this name of the template, right? And that creates a symlink to group vars under this specific name. And then the group of this name is created in the inventory, right? And so the templates you define by the keyword templates, but you can also define variables by keyword vars for the given group. And you can also define variables for the host by not using string, but a dictionary here, and then a dictionary of variables for each host. And as I said, you can also use adding hosts from a group to another group, which you do by this keyword. So basically saying I'm in the group 2, and all hosts defined in the group, together with their variables, put them also in the group 1, right? And you can do the inverse thing, that you can import groups from other groups by using this keyword, and using lists of regular expressions. So it's one regular expression saying any host starting with A, B, and then followed by host 2 will be imported in the group 3. Yeah? So one is this host, second one is this host, so both hosts will be part of the group 3. Yeah? And that's it. It's simple as that. Questions?
Sure. I'll with my mic.
Irje, is it possible to integrate your script or your template with the standard Ansible dynamic inventory?
Well, this is dynamic inventory, is a script.
But you have a very specific syntax format of your inventory.
So you
but
mean
can
like
I use the
AWS?
standard one, for example, to run in your environment, in your inventory, to run a script to provide the dynamic inventory from database, from...
So, as far as I know, Ansible has a configuration option where you can list the sources of the inventory. So if you list this one as first, which might define the groups, and then you use the AWS one, for example, which will fetch the list of hosts from the cloud, and they have some metadata which can assign those hosts to a specific group, then these two could work together. Otherwise, I would have to extend my dynamic inventory for some functionality to fetch the stuff from different clouds or so on. But as I said, the first option could work.
Yeah, if you specify -- inventory multiple times on the Ansible playbook command line, as said, you can source in multiple collections. So some of those could be flat files, directories, or collections of scripts.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Quick question for you. You said your script creates symlinks to the existing group files.
Yeah.
Could you just repeat the question?
If you're going to group files create alphabetically, how can you ensure that your hierarchy is maintained?
Yeah, so it creates the symlinks. There is actually some trade-off here that if you change the structure of the variable files, then some symbolic links which were created previously might become invalid, which is kind of fine, because if they are invalid, then Ansible does not read them, but it's not nice. So what you can do is delete everything which is in the group vars and run the inventory file again, and it will create the links from the scratch, right? So there's no problem here. But I also implemented this script before the version 2.3, and the version 2.3 allows you to have like vault files inside the YAML file, so only the value of the variable is encrypted. And the inventory actually allows to disable the support for the group vars completely, so it loads everything from the inventory variables inside the inventory itself, so there is no group vars needed, right?
I was thinking more of if you define a variable at a variant level and then you want to override it at a child level, but the child comes before variant and an alphabetical sorting, that would invalidate it.
Sorry, I didn't hear you properly.
Don't worry.
You can override any of the variables. You can override from the command line by specifying the extra variables. Yeah.
It'll be fine because the parents are shorter than the children.
They'll always come first.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cool. So next up, we've got Mike talking about AWS.
Okay. It's working. Good. Okay, hi. My name is Michael Delarue. I am, I guess, your local representative of the AWS Working Group for Ansible. And I'm going to talk about microservices using AWS Lambda configured with Ansible. So to get some kind of idea, how many people know what a microservice is? How many people use them? Well, that's quite a number, actually. Okay. How many people use them in AWS with Lambdas? It's getting smaller. It's still about 10 or so, so it's a fair number there. Maybe as many as I was expecting, maybe a little bit more. I think the other question, okay, how many of you used Ansible together with AWS? Right, so we've got, again, a reasonable mixture. Not so many. I saw earlier in the previous presentation, we're talking about configuring on the application layer with Ansible. The way that we do it and the way that we work, we configure the whole system with Ansible and build whole entire systems from absolutely zero. I'm going to put up one slide. This will get you to a URL there if you follow it. If afterwards I'm going to try and do it with live demo things. If you see me using more slides, that's probably a sign everything has broken horribly. But we do have some extra ones you might have noticed. We'll see how it goes. So one of the things that I'm going to show you today are things that are hopefully coming in Ansible 2.4. So this is kind of preview stuff that isn't yet available, that will be coming very soon. And it's things that are currently under development, but you can see them all in GitHub. So the important thing about that link is it then links to another page where we have a lot of links. This is confusing because it goes right to go left. Okay. So this is the links page, and you have links, for example, to the AWS Working Group. Everybody already heard from the earlier speakers about what the working groups are. You saw the list. One of them is working on modules related to AWS. Okay, so what I want to do is maybe talk a little bit what's the benefits for us. Sorry, there's a loud.
Zoom in.
Zoom in. Okay. Sorry.
We'll make all the slides available online. I'll put a link in the Meetup.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's the only. You're not going to read all of these whilst you're here. There is a definition of what a microservice is. There's a definition of what Amazon Web Services are. You can follow up and you'll see all of the things like Lambda, okay? As a very brief summary, microservice, a very, very small piece of code that implements one particular little service. AWS provides a lot of Linux-based services that you can use in the cloud. Most of you probably knew that. What we have new is more modules coming related to building and deploying Lambdas and making, in particular, there's been a Lambda module for a little while, but now there are modules which allow you to create the Lambdas together with the permissions that allow them to run. For us, that's been really good. We use something that's not, well, it didn't start as a pure microservice system. We started with a legacy system which had servers in it. We now have absolutely no servers in our live system. We do not use anything that would be called a server. Of course, underneath that, Amazon is hiding from us all of the idea that there are servers, and they're doing all of that work for us. But we basically deploy zip files up to Amazon, and then they run the code for us and manage everything related to the actual computing infrastructure. Behind that, we also use databases, S3, Bigtable, whatever, that are mostly managed by Amazon. And we do also use RDSs, which are relational databases. It's Amazon's relational database service. Again, there's an AWS module for that. But if you look into my GitHub account, you'll find that there's a bunch of new modules that are making it possible to deploy RDSs in slightly easier ways. Okay. So I don't want to talk about these sort of individually going through the models. I want to show you how you can go and find out how to get everything to run. And the thing I'd like to show you is the Ansible integration tests. Okay. Now that sounds big and scary, but luckily it really shouldn't be for you. The Ansible integration tests are basically just roles. They live in /test/integration/targets, and in there's a role for each module, more or less, as Lundell was saying earlier, connecting directly, John was saying earlier, connecting directly one module name equals one role. And these roles basically run when that module is checked in and a new update is made into the module in the main code. And they test it by running a normal set of Ansible tasks. Okay. And this is an example. This is the one that we're actually going to be interested in. It's useful to learn to read them because this is a great source of documentation. We have here, oops, there's the laser. We have here, is it visible? Can anyone see that? Yeah. Okay, so we have here the tasks at the beginning, and these ones here at the beginning of the integration test, they tend to be failure cases, something that wouldn't normally work, and they're not really that interesting. It's something like, if you give it the wrong set of arguments, then make it break. The region must be specified. That's something that's not so interesting. If you go a little bit down, though, you soon get to test cases like this. And whoops, no, that's a little bit more. Okay, there's one. Upload a Lambda. Okay, this is basically the whole of my talk, in a sense. That's the new modules, and that's how you use them. This bit that I've highlighted in blue is the bit that you can ignore. This is a bit that's normal, that's part of the test cases that just passes in the various authentication parameters you would normally have configured in your AWS account. The rest of this tells you exactly what you need to do to set up one of the new modules and upload a Lambda. So in fact, here, take a Python file, that is our Lambda, bundle it into a zip, upload it with that, and finally Okay, install. Okay, this is a little bit. Finally, down here, create the permissions that are needed to run the Lambda. Okay? Now, you may not believe that's going to work. This being a demo, you're probably right, but let's... Okay, I have an empty so I have an empty terminal. That's my Ansible test runner command. Test runner Ansible test. If you're in the main Ansible directory, if you set up the Ansible environment for developing, the instructions are on the internet and linked, and John looks after them. Correct. This is so you get these. You've got that there. Actually, I'll show you that. Let's do that. Okay. File. Okay. So first, you may want to activate a Python virtual environment so that you've got the various libraries that Ansible needs. Then you want to activate the Ansible hacking thing, which means that you're now working with your local Git, taken from Git version of Ansible. And finally, run the test runner command that I just showed you. There. Okay, so we've just done some environment setup. And you get it running. And you see the tasks running. And I think this... Okay, so we've now, oops, yeah, we've done a demo. So we should now have created, run, tested, and then even destroyed. Okay, that one is failing. Ha ha ha. It was working 10 minutes before this demo. It was working 2 hours before this demo. This is what I'm just checking that I switched over to a different thing. There we go. Okay. So I know what I've done. I've not set the region environment variable. Okay. So here we have it working in the thing. There are some things that you have to have set up and you check that it's working. In that, for each individual integration test, you have to set up the correct credentials in the directory. Okay, and this directory has it. You can see it's now given the API gateway execute permissions on the Lambda, so that it should now, and yes, it has just actually made and connected to it. What it has done, however, is it's destroyed. It's also destroyed the API, which isn't much use if we want to set something up and test it. So, taking this integration test, we can do some very simple things to it. You can see at the end there's typically a destroy phase. We can do Okay, just comment out the destruction of the API and everything that's there. So we leave the things behind. We've got the use of the Lambda policy. We've got the use of the Lambda, and we've got the deployment through API gateway. So we're actually deploying an entire API, processing function, the Lambda behind it, the permissions for it to connect in through AWS, and any data and things like that related to it. And from that, as is traditional in all computer demos, we'll get something that can, oh, sorry, let me just change that one thing. When running this, the other thing to know, you can run, if you give it the after integration, if you give it the -VVV flag, you also get to see, just like Ansible, the full set of output of what's going on during the test. So we can actually see each module, the arguments that are going into it, and the return values from the modules, which will be useful because when we get to the end of this, we'll see the actual URL of the microservice that we've deployed. Okay, deploying your API. By the way, every time that we do this, we're setting up and fully destroying an entire web service. So we've now done that about 6 times. Yep, and there's the URL. Okay, if I now do CURL, it will now return to me, hello, Mr. Ansible tester. Or if we put that into a real live web browser, we've got a microservice that can greet us with whatever name we give it. Okay, that's I think that's the main bulk of the question. There's a question at the back. Sorry? Yeah, definitely. So basically, what Lambdas are good for, there are a bunch of benefits of them. There are a bunch of complexity with them. If you need something with predictable latency, you're not going to like it. If you can cope with occasional latency up to 2 seconds, you'll be completely happy. If you need it hundreds of milliseconds, then you might need to keep it warm, keep it running, keep pinging it, checking it's there. But apart from that, you've got something that can run very, very cheaply when it's very small. There's no cost if you're doing nothing because you don't have a server there at all. There's no cost if you make, 100,000 or something requests a month. It just costs nothing. I think it's maybe up to 1 million or something. And then the cost scales linearly above that. And that's at the other end, it scales very quickly and very easily. If you come to IoT, then you might have a huge number of devices that make a very unpredictable sudden amount of demands, and that would be great that would be a great use for this. Okay. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, the other thing to say is that interconnecting, so when you come here, you've got these modules. The nice thing is that if you've done it with Ansible, you can use that to configure all of your other bits. So maybe you've got old services that are using servers. You've got other services that need to use servers. You've got things that, for example, want to do continuous streaming. You can't do streaming straight from a Lambda because the Lambda has a maximum lifetime of 5 minutes, the end. Okay? So you need to use something else. And so if you've got Ansible, you've got that data that you distribute to your Lambdas, and you've got many of them, maybe 20, each of which are serving maybe 4 or 5 endpoints, or maybe more. And you need to distribute that configuration very efficiently within the system to and from all sorts of outside systems. And that's been for us a real benefit in using it. We started off basically with that, and we ended up that just contributing and working on Ansible modules has been a very good benefit for us. Actually, also writing integration tests, that's something, if you want to communicate with people who are developing in Ansible, you want to say, this thing is broken. If you give us an integration test that says this is broken, it's a very, very clear statement, yeah, that's broken and we can see it. Especially if you can get it failing and shippable, which John would be able to help you with. If you have a new feature and you want to show how you would like it to work, then these integration tests is a great way to go with it. And if you want, and this is what we got the benefit from when we were doing it, started off, wrote integration tests that tested what we were planning to use. Most of it was great. We hit a few interesting snags, and we hit a few interesting ideas. And from that, we really learned in advance what we wanted to do with our system. So it's something to go and look, and if you can see that the integration tests for your particular modules of interest exist, that'll give you more confidence in the way that they work. And if you can see that they're a little bit lacking, adding a few will make you sure that they will work in the end. Okay. I think that's everything I really have to say. I know we're a bit time limited, so.
Cool. Thank you very much, Mike.
Okay. Are there any more questions on that? We've had a few. Nope.
Cool. Excellent.
Great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Okay.
Oh, just remember to take your mic off.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, everyone. That's the end of where we're at today. Can I just get a round of applause for all the speakers that we've had today, please? And also a round of applause to Sainsbury's and the man in the back there behind the glass panel who's pretending to ignore us. For letting us use this excellent venue and even running a little bit of overtime. Thank you for Mike. Just before he went up on stage, I said, you're going to have to shave about 15 minutes off. So thank you very much for coming in as much as you did and for dealing with us changing that last minute. The talks have been recorded, so we'll get those processed and copies of the slides and we'll get them put online. So you've heard a lot about us, but now to sort of sorry, that's just really in my face, to the audience participation point of view, what talks would you like to see? I'm not saying you have to deliver them, but what sort of stuff are people interested in? So show of hands, who'd be interested in using Ansible to configure real hardware? 1. There we go. 1, 2. Any advance on 2, 3. Going once, go. Okay. Cool, yeah, a few on that. Networking. So who's currently using networking? Good. Yes, good. So I'm in the networking team, so I'm very biased towards that. It's the best feature. So Linux stuff will never go anywhere. I didn't say that, it's fine. Windows. Who's managing any Windows stuff? Good stuff. Have a look at the Ansible Fest video. So if you go to ansible.com/videos, all the recordings from the previous Ansible Fests are on there. There's really good Windows stuff and really good best practice stuff on there. What about sort of the more technical stuff about actually developing modules or working on PR workflow, development stuff? Excellent. And you people all know about working groups now, so maybe you'd like to get involved there. Subtle hint. Cool. Excellent. So I really want to, now we've got this awesome new venue, we plan on having these events a bit more frequently. I'm thinking maybe every 2 months or so. If you go on the Meetup page, there's a link to a Google form where you can submit ideas of talks. Doesn't necessarily have to be the next one. If you think, I've got this idea for a talk, but I've never done a talk, or don't know what to do, a bit worried about it, throw an idea in, I'll drop you an email. Basically, if you've got a passion for something, That's all that's needed. You just speak about it, so that's great. Yep.
Who would be interested in a talk about the RDS modules and possibly migrating from the old one to the new ones that are coming?
Any interest in the Amazon AWS?
Amazon AWS RDS, okay.
Cool, a few people, that's good. So I'm new to this as well, so feedback welcome to me, preferably constructive criticism, but preferably constructive. You can contact me via the Meetup app. As I said, I want to do this pretty frequently, so welcome your feedback. Just final thing, as we're done now, just make sure you pick up all your stuff and any rubbish. Make your way out to the lifts. In a minute, some people will see you up because apparently it's a bit complicated to use those lifts. Cool, well thank you very much everyone. See you again in 2 months.